Hey everybody, welcome to Friendship Shaving. My name's Mark. It's always good to be here. I've just been putting on a little bit of Progresso White pre-shave. Got a little bit to show you and a little bit to talk about this week. You may remember, if you saw last week's video, that the knot had come out of my rubber set 203 ball bristle knot, as you can see. I've reset that, but it's not quite completely set yet, so I won't be using that this week. I've gone off using epoxy resin to set my knots. It sets too hard for me, and I'm beginning to prefer a silicone sealant. This, as you can see, is the Gorilla sealant, and it is multi-use shower and bathroom, and on the back it says good for the shave down. Honest. But the reason I went over to silicone is that I've got a T400, an Alpha T400 brush. There was another knot in here and I thought I may be able to reuse it, but by the time I got the knot out, I'd completely ruined both the knot and the thread on the inside of this ferrule, so I had to buy a new one, which is a bit pointless really, and if that was a vintage shaving brush like that one, it would be completely ruined. So I've gone away from using an epoxy resin. I feel that it's just too hard, it sets too hard. So I'm going to use my Alpha T400 today with a black and white knot, and I've got my Martin de Condra Fougére sample. Got the last of that sample in my Old Spice mug, and I think I've got enough there for another shave. The razor I'm going to be using, I'm just going to dry my hands before I pick up the case. I'm going to be using an old ball end type razor this week. This was a very popular model for Gillette. It was very cheap to produce, and they put it into lots and lots of sets. There's nearly always a crack in the handle, and I've got a very slight crack here. There are records apparently back in the day that show that that crack was even happening way back then, and you know, Gillette still made their money even though they had to send out replacement handles. But this one is part of my khaki set, and I have the set right here, and I found out just 2 days ago that there are two types of khaki set. The one I've got says property of the US Army, and of course this was made for the US Army and given out to serving soldiers. But there is another set, and if you get a set that says made in the USA, it will look exactly the same as this. The case is the same, it will have the same pins in it, thumbtacks I believe they're called in America. We tend to call them drawing pins. The only difference is it will say made in the USA instead of property of US Army, and those sets were made for general sale to the public, and obviously you could buy one for yourself or you could buy one to send to the troops abroad. Now the razor I've got says property of a US Army, so that I know I've got the right one. You maybe can't see, but it says property of US Army on the underside of the head cap. And the serial code is J1067, which places it in 1918. Now the razor I'm going to be using is a Persona blue. I find these to be very good razors, so we're going to pop that into, sorry, I find them to be good razor blades, so we'll pop that into the razor. Screw the handle on, and that is all set for a shave. Now let's dump my brush again and get it into this soap. We just shake off some of that water. I don't want to get it too wet. Now this brush I've got, the knot in here, while it looks like a tuxedo knot, I believe this one came from DS Cosmetics, or possibly Umo. Umo make the motherlode knot, and it is essentially a knot made for powder and makeup rather than a shaving brush, but it is used in some shaving brushes, and I believe this knot, while it has the black and white colouring of the tuxedo, it is a very, very soft knot indeed, and I wonder if this is made for makeup, but it's been used in a shave brush. It's very soft indeed. It's definitely softer than my Yaki tuxedos. I think I've probably got enough on that brush, and I believe I might have enough for another shave in my Old Spice mug. Oh, now let's see what this is like. I haven't used this for quite a little while, this brush. Oh, it really is incredibly soft. But as you can see, it's working quite well. I've spent my week looking at brushes, seeing what synthetic brushes are available to buy. I've actually purchased a Phoenix Artisan Accoutrements shaving brush. Oh, the name's just gone right out of my head. I'll come back to that. But I found a British website, shavestation.co.uk, that had the best selection of brushes, although a lot of them had sold out. I assume they will get more stock in. Best selection I've seen so far on a British website. Most of the British sites sell the usual suspects, so they often sell Müllers, Edwin Jaggers, Megas, Kent brushes, and all of those synthetics really tend to have the same knot in them. So it was nice to find a site where you could buy something a little bit different in the UK without having to buy from America and pay all that postage. I saw a lovely brush at West Coast Shaving. It was a $16 brush, beautiful brush. But the brush was cheaper than the postage to get it to me, so I didn't buy that one. But, you know, maybe I'll save up and get a few from there when they have a bit more stock. There we are, and I think that's pretty good. I often seem to get it on my glasses. There we are. So here we go with a 1918 US military edition razor. It is a good shave with this razor. It is an exceptionally good shave, let me tell you. The edge of the head cap perhaps has worn down, particularly on one side. When I take just the head cap off and run my finger along it, it does feel quite sharp. I do find with this razor, on the couple of occasions that I've used it, I don't bring it out very often. I do find it's not the smoothest shave I've ever had, but it's a fantastic shave after you've all finished. It's that first pass is not bad, but not as smooth as perhaps you would like. But I'm a little bit overawed that I'm shaving with a razor from 1918. The serial number, as I said, is a J, and all the J serial numbers were assigned to the military. There were no I's, and there were some J razors that went over into 1919 and were produced then. It might interest you to know, if you don't already, that when World War I started, the USA were entirely neutral. I think the thought of the time was that they viewed World War I really as nothing to do with them. And it was a struggle between the sort of old world powers. Now obviously got the angle just right on this side. That was a little bit better, or perhaps different side of the razor. As I say, one side of this head cap is quite sharp. Anyway, the sinking of the Lusitania, which was a passenger ship, was the beginning of the process that brought America into World War I. Certainly one of the events that started to bring America into the war, and war was declared by Congress in 1917. But it wasn't until 1918 that American troops started arriving on the Western Front. And by the summer of that year, 10,000 men per day were arriving on the front lines. And obviously, that had a massive impact on the war, which ended in 1918. So, you know, the American intervention was no doubt a huge part of that. It's quite interesting to note as well, especially at this time when we have the COVID-19 pandemic raging throughout the world, and we are trying as varying nations to deal with that and recover from that and try and move forward. It's interesting to note that in 1918, of course, the world was ravaged with Spanish flu, and 30,000 of those American troops died of the Spanish flu before they ever reached the front line. Terrible, really terrible. Now that brush is incredibly soft. I was just turning it around then to see if it felt different on one side than the other, but it doesn't. I'm shaving with a razor that is 102 years old. Oh, it's just amazing. I have got an older razor than this, an older Gillette. I will bring that out for a shave one day. I like the later version of this razor from 1921 through 28. They essentially made the razor with a thicker head cap, and it changed the angle of the blade, I believe, slightly, and find it to be not as aggressive as this one, and just a lovely razor. Now I should mention, if you don't know already, as I spoke of the pandemic and COVID-19, I'm sure many of you know that Manny from Johnshaves lost his father to the COVID-19 virus. And there's been a fundraising site set up by Chris Bailey from iAMCDB and from Tim Delaney, the Scented Soldier, to raise funds. I will put the link below. But perhaps I should mention that there are some products from manufacturers and people like myself in the shaving world that have been offered up for a raffle. And if you spend $5 or if you gift $5 to help with funeral costs, you will be eligible to go into the raffle, and there are lots of prizes and there are going to be lots of raffles. So perhaps if you haven't already, you could help a gentleman out in this time of need, and I'm sure lots of you know about that already, but I just thought I'd mention it in today's shave. There we are, I'm sitting right back on the head a little bit there, just to make that a little bit smoother. As I say, it's not the smoothest of shaves, and for a daily razor, you know, I wouldn't use this obviously. I have razors that are much more comfortable to use than this, but it just rocks my boat that it's so old, and here I am in 2020 having a shave with a military set razor from the First World War. And I doubt, when these razors were made, I doubt they had any idea that we would still be using them in 2020. Oh, let's get that bit off there. Do you know, I've shaved with a better razor blade in that razor than that Persona. For some reason, that felt a little bit rougher than normal. And I think the last time I used it, I used a Gillette 7 o'clock black, which was a smooth blade. And I won't do it now, but you can be assured that this razor will be cleaned and dried, and it will be put away back in its case, and it will go back in my little display case in the lounge room. Where I have 6 or 7 razors that I particularly like and keep on display just to bring out and use occasionally. I must admit I'm after a few more to go in that case. I'm particularly interested in the British razors, the British Gillette razors I should say. There are a few that I'd like, and I've been looking out for an open comb twist to open a razor from about 1935 through 39, that sort of time period. And very shortly after that, going into 40s, Gillette moved away from an open comb bar on their twist to open razors to the solid bar that we all know. So we have been on the lookout for one of those. Now got a new aftershave in the den. I've got some Skin Bracer original aftershave by Menon, and this was a gift from Johnshaves. If you haven't already, check out Johnshaves 101, a really straightforward, nice guy. John did a den tour and he had quite a few bottles of this, and I asked John, where did you get that from? Because I thought you could only get it in the States, and he was kind enough to send me a bottle and a bottle of Aqua Velvet as well. So I was doubly lucky there. So thank you, John, very much for this. And now when you take the top off, when I took the top off of this and I smelled it, it really reminded me of something that my dad used to use. And I couldn't work out what it was for ages, and I think it reminds me of Brute. And I asked John what he thought, and he said it reminds him of Brute, but with vanilla in the background. And yeah, I think that's spot on, actually. Now I've got a hole in the top of there. Can you see? It's about the size of my little finger there. And I could do with a smaller hole because it absolutely pours out. It's a little bit strongly scented for me, so what I do is mix it with a drop of Nivea, and that just works perfectly for me. So we're going to go with the tiniest drop of Skin Bracer and a little drop of the balm, and then mix it all together. And it is still quite bracing. It smells beautiful. And post shave, this mix together feels beautiful on your skin. Now I'll tell you what is strange, because the last shave I had with this razor was 2 days ago. I had an amazing shave and I haven't quite done so well today. I missed a couple of little bits there, and it's not so good up here either. But the last shave I had, without thinking about it, was just BBS, and usually that's how I find these really old razors from Gillette from 1918, the old types. So there we are, that is my shave for today, and I hope you enjoyed it. You keep yourselves well. I'll see you next time around. Let's be careful out there.